So I want to start with a moment, one I think a lot of us have had, but we rarely talk about. You open your phone, scroll past a name that once meant everything to you, someone who knew your middle name, your coffee order, your heartbreaks. And now you don't talk, you're not mad, there wasn't a big blow up, it just ended. And there's this ache, this strange mix of nostalgia and guilt. And if you're like most people I talk to, that guilt whispers, you should have tried harder. What kind of friend are you? Here's the truth. Some friendships expire, and that doesn't mean they were fake or that you failed. It means they were real, they mattered, and like so many beautiful things in life, they had a season. We've been taught that if a friendship doesn't last forever, something went wrong. But friendship isn't a contract, it's a connection, and connections shift. Here's what I've learned through research, lived experience, and listening to countless stories. Here's what we don't always understand until we're right in the thick of it. Growth can be both beautiful and brutal. When we talk about growing apart, it sounds so clean, like a quiet, mutual drifting. But real life, it's messier. It's waking up one day and realizing the person who used to understand every word before you said it now stares at you blankly when you try to explain what matters to you. It's laughing less, talking less, feeling like you're not quite seen anymore, not in the way you used to be. But here's the truth I've come to trust. You can outgrow people without outloving them. Let me unpack that. As we move through life, we go through what researchers call developmental transitions. These are moments when our identity shifts, sometimes gradually, sometimes all at once, getting married, becoming a parent, going through loss, starting therapy, coming out, moving cities, getting sober. These are all seismic shifts in how we see the world and ourselves. And what happens when you shift? You start to ask different questions. You might crave deeper conversations or need more quiet. You might develop boundaries where there used to be none. You might need space. And that can feel threatening to a friendship that was built on who you used to be. What I've seen over and over again is that the deeper we go into our own growth, especially the kind born from pain, the more we start to feel the edges of old friendships. Some friends celebrate your healing. They cheer when you start speaking up, even when your voice shakes. But others, they miss the old version of you, the agreeable one, the always available one, the one who laughed off the things that now make your stomach turn. And that's where it gets hard, because now you're torn between honoring your evolution or preserving the comfort of something that no longer fits. And let me tell you, guilt loves to creep in here. It'll whisper, "You've changed," like it's an accusation, like growth is a betrayal. But here's what I know. Growth is not disloyalty. One of the most courageous things you can do is let a friendship fade when it no longer holds space for who you've become. It doesn't mean you don't value the history. It means you're honoring the present. And that's not cold. That's deeply respectful. Sometimes we confuse longevity with intimacy. Just because someone's been in your life for 10 years doesn't mean they still know how to hold your story now. And that's okay. It really is. Some people are meant to walk with us through certain chapters, not the whole book. I've had friendships I thought would last forever. The kind where you say, we'll be at each other's weddings, we'll raise our kids together, and then life happened. One of us started asking deeper questions, the other wasn't ready. Or maybe we just couldn't meet each other where we were anymore. It hurt. But it also taught me that letting go with love is better than holding on in fear. So if you're in that place, grieving a friendship that faded as you grew, know this: nothing was wasted. Every late night phone call, every inside joke, every season you survived together, that was real. It mattered. It just doesn't have to last forever to count. We love to believe that deep friendships are immune to time and distance. that no matter what changes, jobs, cities, seasons, we'll always find our way back to each other. It's a beautiful idea, and sometimes it's true. But more often than we want to admit, it's not that simple. What we don't talk about enough is how much routine and shared space hold our relationships together. Think about it. How many of your closest friendships started because you saw each other every day? School, work, the gym, your kids' soccer games. There's a rhythm there, an ease. You bump into each other, you share updates in real time, you laugh about the same things, you notice the small stuff because you're there. And then life shifts. Someone moves, someone changes careers, the group chat gets quieter, and suddenly a friendship that once felt effortless now requires planning, coordination, effort. And effort, when you're already stretched thin, can feel overwhelming. There's this study I love. It came out of MIT, and it showed that the biggest predictor of friendship was simple, physical proximity. The people who lived closest to each other were most likely to become friends, not because they were the most compatible, but because they saw each other regularly. And that regularity built intimacy. I think we underestimate how powerful consistency is, not in the dramatic, sweeping gestures, but in the small, steady ones. A 5-minute chat after class, a coffee every Friday, walking to the parking lot together. These things don't sound profound, but they build trust. They build emotional muscle memory. So when we lose that shared space, when we no longer orbit the same routines, what we often experience isn't a loss of love, but a loss of structure. And the relationship starts to feel distant, not because anyone did anything wrong, but because the scaffolding that held it up quietly disappeared. That's when the guilt sneaks in again. We think, I should reach out, I should check in, I should have made more time. But here's the hard truth. Sometimes it's just not sustainable. Not because you don't care, but because your life is asking more of you now. And keeping everything going the way it once was, it's not possible. The friends who remain close, despite changing proximity, are the ones we choose again and again. But that choosing takes energy. It takes mutual effort. And sometimes a friendship is deeply meaningful for a specific season because of the life you shared in that season, not because you failed to carry it forward. When I think of some of the people who shaped me the most, many of them aren't in my daily life anymore. We were thick as thieves during certain chapters, college, my early career, the chaos of new motherhood. And when that chapter closed, the bond gently dissolved. Not in anger, just in reality. It doesn't mean it didn't matter. It means it did, enough to hold space for me in a specific moment of becoming, enough to shape who I was when I needed it most. And honestly, that's more than enough. I think one of the most dangerous myths we believe about friendship is that love should mean never having to have the hard conversations. That if it's a real friendship, things should just click, right? No awkwardness, no missteps, just constant intuitive understanding. But that's not love. That's fantasy. The reality is every long-term relationship, friendships included, will face moments of friction. Someone forgets your birthday. Someone cancels one too many times. A joke lands wrong, a text gets left unanswered. And at first you brush it off. You tell yourself it's fine, they're busy, or don't make it a thing, just let it go. But it does become a thing, not because you talked about it, but because you didn't. That's where resentment creeps in. Quiet, slow, often disguised as politeness. You smile, you nod, you keep showing up, but there's a wall forming. Invisible at first, then thicker, then solid, until one day the friendship feels distant and cold, and you don't even know how you got there. Here's what I've learned. Where there is no truth, there is no intimacy. We avoid hard conversations because they're uncomfortable. because we don't want to be the needy one, the sensitive one, the one who makes it weird. But what we're really doing is abandoning ourselves. We're choosing silence over honesty and resentment over vulnerability. I've done this. I've been the person who swallowed the hurt, convinced myself it wasn't a big deal, only to later realize I was carrying it like a stone in my chest. And by the time I worked up the courage to say something, the damage was already done. The connection had eroded, not from one moment, but from 1,000 unspoken ones. And here's the kicker. We think we're preserving the friendship by keeping the peace, but we're not. We're just slowly walking it toward its expiration date. It's not the argument that ends it, it's the silence. According to the Gottman Institute, relationships, romantic or platonic, that thrive long-term have one thing in common: repair. It's not that they don't hurt each other. It's that they name it. They sit in the mess. They say, hey, that didn't feel good. And they work through it. And that takes courage, especially in friendships where we don't always have language for rupture and repair. We think that's for couples, that's for family. But if we want deeper friendships, we have to be willing to do the deep work. That means showing up honestly. That means saying, I love you, and also, I felt dismissed. Or, I know this might be small, but I need to say it anyway. And listen, and some friendships won't survive those conversations. Sometimes the truth pushes people away. But if that's what happens, it was already fragile. You're not destroying something by telling the truth. You're testing whether it was built to hold it. And sometimes you say the hard thing and the other person leans in. They say, I didn't know. Thank you for telling me. And you rebuild, stronger, braver, together. But without that willingness, resentment becomes the silent killer of closeness. And the saddest part, it was preventable. It didn't have to be the end. I wish we talked about this more. We walk around every day carrying to-do lists in our heads, expectations on our backs, and relationships in our hearts. And somehow we're supposed to make space for it all the time. But here's the truth we tend to avoid. You can love people deeply and still not have the capacity to keep up with everyone in your life. There's this invisible pressure to be a perfect friend, the one who remembers every birthday, responds to every text within minutes, who always checks in, always follows up, always has the right words when someone's hurting. And if you miss a step, the shame voice kicks in. You're a bad friend, you're selfish, you're disappearing. But here's what I've learned through research, years of interviews, and hard-won personal experience. You only have so much energy, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And when life starts asking more of you, whether through parenthood, illness, grief, work demands, or your own healing journey, your available bandwidth shrinks. And sometimes it shrinks down to the bare minimum. This doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're human. We tend to think of our emotional energy like a renewable resource, like if we just sleep enough or organize our calendars better, we'll find the time and heart space to show up for everyone the way we used to. But that's not how it works. Emotional labor is real. Caregiving is real. Burnout is real. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give from a heart that hasn't had time to rest or grieve or just breathe. Sometimes friendships fade not because anything went wrong, but because life got really full. And in that fullness, you had to make choices. You had to prioritize the people in your household, your health, your kids, your partner, your sanity. And even though it hurts to lose touch with someone you care about, it's not always about neglect. Sometimes it's about survival. One of the most compassionate truths I've come to accept is that love doesn't always mean access. You can love someone, be grateful for them, hold a deep place in your heart for their presence in your life, and still not have the energy to maintain a consistent relationship with them right now. And that's okay. It's okay to say, I don't have the capacity right now, and still carry someone with tenderness in your memory. It's okay to honor the space they held in your life without feeling obligated to stretch yourself thin just to keep something going out of guilt. There are seasons when connection is effortless, and there are seasons when connection takes everything you have. And sometimes you just don't have it, and that doesn't make you unkind or flaky or selfish. It makes you honest. I think one of the bravest things we can do is to stop pretending we have infinite capacity and start honoring our limits. To say, I miss you, I love you, and I'm at my edge right now. That's not weakness, that's clarity, that's respect for yourself and for the other person. Because sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let go, not out of indifference, but out of integrity. We grow up with this idea that every ending should come with a bow, that if a friendship ends, there should be a sit-down talk, a moment of shared clarity, maybe even some tears and a hug, something clean, something that makes it feel finished. But most of the time, that's not how it happens. Most endings don't come with a final chapter. They drift, they dissolve, they just stop. And that can be excruciating, especially if you're someone like me, someone who believes in language and connection and naming things. But one of the hardest truths I've had to learn is that closure is often an inside job. There are so many friendships I thought would last forever. And when they ended, it wasn't because we sat down and said, this is over. It was a slow unraveling. Fewer texts, quieter birthdays. Eventually, the silence settled in. And because there was no clear break, my mind played tricks on me. I kept wondering, was it something I did? Should I reach out again? Did they just forget? And the truth was, I may never know. The need for resolution is human. We crave explanations. We want to make sense of things. That desire comes from a beautiful place in us, the part that values connection, that wants to understand. But sometimes people can't or won't give us that closure. Maybe they don't have the tools. Maybe they're avoiding conflict. Maybe their own shame or hurt keeps them from meeting us in the space of truth. And maybe, just maybe, it's not about us at all. It's in these moments that we have to turn inward and do the work ourselves. That means giving ourselves permission to grieve an ending we didn't choose. It means sitting with the discomfort of unanswered questions. It means letting go of the fantasy that one more conversation would tie it all up neatly. I remember hearing from someone in a research interview who said, I never got to tell her how much she meant to me, or ask why she stopped showing up. So now I tell myself, I tell my journal, I say it out loud in the car. And there was something so sacred in that, a kind of radical self-respect, because even without the other person there, they were still honoring the truth. Sometimes we need to write the letter we'll never send. Sometimes we need to light a candle, say a prayer, or simply cry on the kitchen floor. Whatever the ritual looks like, it matters, not because it brings the person back, but because it brings us back to our own hearts, to the reality that we can still heal even without resolution. I think closure is less about tying up loose ends and more about accepting that some endings are inherently unfinished. The peace doesn't come from the perfect conversation. It comes from the choice to stop rewriting the story in our minds and start writing a new one in our lives. And when we do that, when we stop chasing closure from someone else and offer it to ourselves, we reclaim something powerful, our agency, our healing, our ability to move forward without needing every question answered. That's not letting go without care. That's letting go with care, with intention, with grace. And that's more than enough. So here's the truth I want to leave with you today. Not all friendships are meant to last forever. And that doesn't make them any less real, any less valuable, or any less formative. Some people come into our lives for a season, a reason, or a moment that shapes us in ways we only recognize years later. Their presence mattered, their love mattered, and their absence, while painful, is not necessarily a failure. letting go doesn't mean we didn't love well. It doesn't mean the connection wasn't deep. Sometimes it simply means we're honoring what was without forcing what no longer is. And that is one of the most tender, courageous acts of all. The expiration of a friendship doesn't erase the memories, the laughter, the way you felt seen in that chapter of your life. It means you're growing. And sometimes growing means outgrowing, not out of judgment, but out of truth. So if you're carrying the ache of a fading friendship or the quiet confusion of a connection that slipped through your fingers, know this: you are not alone and you are not broken. You're evolving. You're choosing presence over performance. You're making space for the relationships that meet you where you are today, not where you used to be. So grieve if you need to, remember them with kindness, release the shame, and trust that your capacity for connection is still very much alive, just shifting, just unfolding, just becoming something new. Good luck out there. Be gentle with your heart and keep showing up for the people and the person you're becoming.